Bigger's not always better, right? I think when you're young and ambitious, for me, it was all about growth. How big could I make it? A lot of people focusing on the top line numbers. How much volume can you do? How many transactions can you do? You really got to work with your giftings.
This episode is for entertainment and information only. The opinions expressed are not professional advice, and listening does not create a client relationship. Always consult your own qualified professional before making any financial, legal, or health decisions. Hello and welcome to the Healthy Wealth Experience. I'm your host, Chris Hall. Joining us today is the titan of the North State real estate scene, Cory Meyer. Starting from humble beginnings in 2006, Cory has built one of the top-ranked real estate teams in the country, completing over 3,000 career sales and consistently ranking as an elite performer in California. But beyond the numbers and the sold signs, Cory is a firm believer that true wealth is a multi-dimensional journey involving health, mindset, and community impact. Today, we're picking his brain on where the renting market is headed in 2026, the national trends every investor needs to watch, and how he balances high-level production with a focus on personal well-being. Cory, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris. Excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for being here. So first and foremost, tell us a little bit about your background. People kind of want to, they know who you are. Some of the guests, obviously outside of the renting market probably don't know who you are. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get into real estate and, where'd you start? Where's your beginnings?
Yeah, I started when I was young. I got involved in construction. Watched a guy walking around the job sites that we were helping on, and my parents knew him well. He was a very well-off investor, and I started tracking what is he doing, and he was a flipper, and he had been flipping since the 70s. I said, well, he doesn't have his bags on every day, his tool bags. And I knew he was doing really well, so it intrigued me. And so when I was really young, I started transitioning from, being in construction, working for my wife's dad, who was a contractor, and my dad, who was a sort of a handyman after his career at IBM, and learning a lot of it, and started flipping houses when I was really young. So I was 19 when I picked up my first one and started doing that. The market was very forgiving at the time. That was the early 2000s. Wasn't as disciplined with them as I could have been and everything, but it led me right up to the market crash in 2005 and 6, and I ended up moving up to Redding, California, where I knew nobody, and decided at that time, right when the market crashed, to get my real estate license, right? What a better time to jump in. So I'd been putting it off for years because I really didn't need it when I was flipping some houses, and finally completed the whole course and everything and got licensed and just hit the ground running. In 2006, I got licensed. 2010, I got my broker's license and just built my way up from there. Followed others, tracked what they were doing, guys doing high-level sales, and just started pushing it and started doing a lot of marketing up in the Redding area, and just went full throttle. So that's kind of my background in real estate. Built some teams, owned some franchises, kind of done it all. Failed at a lot, won at a lot. And so that takes me to where I am here today with a small real estate team right here in Redding, and work in the Shasta County market primarily. We do a little bit outside of the county. Used to do a lot more, had some other markets I worked as well, but for now I'm just really focused on sales myself with my small team and trying to do the best job we can for customers.
Nice. Hey, so where were you flipping houses? Where were you at before you came to Redding?
I started in Reno, believe it or not. I grew up with my stepdad. My biological father, he started dabbling in big investing and stuff and was doing seminars on it. And I went to one of those seminars with a friend of his who was preaching about, investing and real estate and flips and everything like that. So I was living in Santa Cruz, actually playing college football for the JC at the time, and went to that seminar, and I actually changed my flight from back home to Reno, where I found my first opportunity at a flip because it was 80,000. I grew up in Sonoma Valley. So at the time it was like, even in the early 2000s, I guess that was before the height of the market, but it was still just very expensive, right? You know, you were spending 500,000 for an outhouse and I could never get a start there. So found one for 80 grand in Reno and I just went there and started there. They were really tough to get at the time. So I finished that one. And then I made my way back to Sonoma County, did some in Sebastopol, and then finally made my way back to Sonoma Valley, where I did a couple there. I ended up tearing a few down and rebuilding a few, and then finally that kind of the market again started turning, and I ended up in Shasta County. So, and I went full into sales and stepped away. I still do play around with it a bit. I did 3 last year, but it's not my main focus anymore. Primarily just focused on sales. So that's how I got my start and where I did. I just had to kind of find my way back into a market as we built up the ability to afford a higher price point.
For those of you listening that don't know what Sonoma County is, it's a county in Northern California that is like the Napa Valley. It's a lot of wine country, so everything there is super expensive. Not so much in Reno, although prices obviously going up there as well. Do you feel like flipping houses gave you a really good base for being helpful to your clients as far as like, what makes a good house, what makes a fixer-upper, et cetera?
Yeah, people comment it all the time. I mean, even last week, they get really into the fact of how much I know about construction overall, so they love it. And people get taught in sales, don't say negative things, don't call that out or whatever. I kind of call everything out when I walk into a house with a client. I want them to know, and they really appreciate it. So it's been really helpful overall, and the clients love it just because I know what I'm looking at and I know how that whole house was built.
I think that people think that because they're nervous they're going to lose the sale if they're, honest. But, ultimately, you're at the end of the day, you're trying to save people money and you're trying to earn them more money. And if you can call out a few things that need to be fixed or changed, like, ultimately at the end of the day, you're making them more money. So, but I get it. To me, that would be a lack mindset versus a like abundance mindset. You're not going to get every deal, but you're always going to have your integrity. So I think that's awesome. Good for you.
That's what's most important.
Right. So, let's just talk a little bit about real estate in general, and then we're going to talk a little bit about like your health and how you've done certain things. You said at one time you had, big brokerage, a lot of realtors under you, and now you've kind of downsized and stuff like that. For those of you guys who are not local, there was a time when you had partnered with as Barbara Cochran. Am I saying her last name right?
Yeah, we had the endorsement there. Yes.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. She was a big deal on the Shark Tank for a really long time. And I remember seeing those commercials everywhere and stuff. So I think, I think a lot of business owners that, the ideas get big, get big, get big. And then you do see this where people achieve those kinds of successes. And then you feel like the next phase of your life is get small, get lean, get mean. And then, because at some point you're really like, you're hiring people to like pay them instead of like, looking at your bottom line. So where was the transition where you kind of went away from the big agency to like a tight group of people that, all know what they're doing?
Bigger's not always better, right? I think when you're young and ambitious, for me, it was all about growth. How big could I make it? A lot of people focusing on the top line numbers. How much volume can you do? How many transactions can you do? You really got to work with your giftings. I'm really good at sales and navigating transactions and figuring out how to pull deals together. And for me, managing at one point, we were right at, 40 people. So it's just always chaos. I remember young, I'd see guys in their 40s and stuff and know they used to have these huge outfits, whether it was an HVAC company or whatever, and they had all the trucks and boy, they're huge. They must be just killing it. And then why'd you end up now? You're a one-man crew and stuff. And you realize later on, there's it's a lot more control, a lot more happiness, a lot more, you can net more instead of constantly have that huge outflow of massive overhead. And then people are tough to manage, getting people to work all the time, relying your success on their work ethic or when they feel like working or whatever it looks like. And I especially feel like that's getting more and more challenging this day and age. But being able to control your outcomes based on your own efforts and everything, it's just a lot more enjoyable. And then having great people, being able to take care of people at a higher level on your team instead of being so spread. And that's one of the biggest things that for me has really been exciting. Being able to control my destiny based on my inputs every day. What am I putting in? What's going to come from those? How can I leverage, obviously support. I have a great support crew, great staff, and I have a few great agents, but it's been much more enjoyable to have that smaller crew and be more focused on better, not bigger. That's kind of a theme this year. It's part of a theme, a coaching company I'm involved with, but that's our main focus. How do we serve the client at the highest level, not the most client amount of clients, but really bring great service and expertise to the clients that we are serving. So it's been really good and it's been a relief really for me.
Yeah, I know. I think that's excellent. One of the things I try to do in my practice, there's a lot of financial advisors who will literally, they'll take anybody with a pulse and they're like trying to build this like, practice, if you will. Really, they're just trying to build a book of business. I think, probably at some point to sell it or whatever. But like for me, when I first started with this, I read a really good book. And if you're a real estate agent, if you're a mortgage person, if you're doing any sort of sales at all, financial advisor, it's more geared towards financial advisor, but it's called Game of Numbers. And one of the things he talks about in that book is building a practice that you want, like building a lifestyle that you want. And, I never wanted to be the guy managing 800 clients, constantly taking phone calls, constantly, dealing with, the disaster du jour, et cetera. So, I've purposely kept, my group as tight as I can as well. So, I definitely understand the concept of bigger is not better when it comes to like giving good service, helping people serve. One of the other things I thought was really cool. One time I heard like, hey, listen, let's say you have a 5-star hotel and there's like 220 rooms, right? So you can basically, be 5-star hotel to 220 families at a time. But if all of a sudden you're trying to like serve 300 families, well, now you've got people sleeping in the hallway, the gym's getting overused, things are breaking, people are sleeping on the loungers and next to the pool. I mean, it's no longer a 5-star hotel. It's terrible. So just like knowing where your capacity is, I think is really important, and knowing what your skill sets are. And again, like you like selling. So it makes sense to put deals together as part of your joy. So it makes sense that you started working towards that more. Let's talk about real estate in general. So what percentage of people buying houses right now would you say are like new home buyers, existing home buyers trying to level up, existing home buyers trying to level down, or like people trying to buy like investment properties? Like how would you break the percentage up right now based on where interest rates are and where the economy's at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd have to probably make a wild guess at that one, to be honest with you. We deal with such a mix up here. The amount of first time home buyers is not as high as maybe people would think with prices right now and rates and everything. Rates are getting way better, but I would say we deal with probably out of our clients, I would say probably 10 to 15% only are first time home buyers dealing with people that are definitely moving up. It's getting people off their 3% rate right now to move where they want to go is a big deal. We've had we still have frequent people moving up here from the Bay Area or down south or wherever. Reading, our market is still very affordable, comparatively speaking, right? I always say, like, we're one of the lower prices on the Western United States now. I mean, you look at everywhere people would go up and move out to. I mean, we're lower cost than Idaho, Montana, and all those areas. So we have, I would say it's fairly even across the board, from first time home buyers to move up buyers to people downsizing, investors. That's a tougher deal right now. Getting the numbers to crunch and make sense is a tough deal. And so, yeah, I don't, I would say it's a pretty even mix if I had to guess. You're causing me to think about it right now.
Mhm.
I haven't tracked that exact mix, but I would say it's fairly even,
Yeah.
to be honest, right now. The first time home buyer is definitely a struggle right now. You bring insurance costs into it. It's not cheap right now. Then you add rates, even though they're coming down, and then the average sale price of a home right now in Shasta County, which is right around 408 for the Q4 of last year. It's a pricey deal.
Yeah.
You're looking at, you got to have even with 20% down, a couple thousand, $3,000 for the average price home right now with insurance and everything lumped in and property taxes.
Yeah. I think right now
So
when you say 408, I think, man, people out there probably think like you can get a house for 408 if they're in like the rest of California. But like for
yeah.
other people that are outside of California, they're like, you can buy a house for 408 in California. Like that seems really low. And I think it's, it goes to mention what you said, which is like we are sort of like this far removed market. California is really should be like 7 states. It's so big. But where we're at, we are probably definitely, like you said, we're one of the most affordable places in California, but also on the West Coast. So it's funny, like I hear the 408 and I can just hear people going like, holy cow, on both sides of the mark. We used to refer to the people who came up from the Bay Area and Los Angeles area, we'd call them equity refugees. So they would sell their house for they'd sell their little condo for 1.2 million, come up here, buy a house for 560 that was way nicer than anything they had. And then they'd have a house for free. And then I always thought the people who kind of left Redding, they didn't typically leave Redding to go down to the Bay Area or go down to LA. They would usually leave to go to Colorado or Montana or something like that. Do you still feel like that's the case now?
Yeah, they would, but we're getting people that left the state coming back now. So, I mean, it's not when you crunch the numbers and everything. Yeah, I mean, depending on what the value is to change your whole life, friends, family, business, you name it. But for me, it doesn't make sense, even though California is really controversial with the people running the state and everything. But we are getting people that are coming back now, and all those people that wanted to leave and go to Idaho and everywhere else. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at the prices there now, but
Mm-hmm.
places like Boise, I mean, they're probably another, I don't know if it's 100,000 more than Reading now, but they're up there. You go to Bozeman, Montana, or areas like that. They call that Los Angeles now. I mean, the prices are just, it blows your mind, really. So Reading's really affordable. We still get those people, yeah, selling a little bungalow in the Silicon Valley, and they're coming up and they buy for 1,700,000 down there, and they buy something for a mansion here for 1,200,000 compared to what they're coming from, and that still happens. And that's why my wife and I are here. I think of all my friends growing up in Sonoma Valley, which was with the time we left, it was one of the most expensive places in the United States. And you're literally getting a 1920s 800 square foot bungalow for $700,000 that's full of dry rot, and then for us, we see, we bought our first house here. It was 275,000 for a couple acres in a 2,000 square foot house. It was like just blew our mind. And we literally never had been here, and we came up that day and bought a house.
Wow.
And so people still see that. We get a ton of the buyers from the Bay and all over that see our land prices, and we get inquiries all the time. And then I have to tell them, that's really not a great area. It's way out in the middle of nowhere, but they see 40 grand. And then when you get down to land prices now and the cost of construction, usually it makes much more sense for them to just look at the actual available resale market in residential here, and they'll get a much better deal and be way farther ahead. So we get a lot of that stuff, people coming up and looking at the prices, but we are getting people moving back,
Yeah.
shockingly enough.
The last I heard is housing prices in our area is about, let's call it about 260 a square foot, maybe a little bit higher if you have a pool or a little nicer location or something like that, but right around 260. Obviously, that goes down a little bit if the price square footage goes up, to like the 3,000 square foot plus. But I would say, like, from what I understand is without even counting land costs, just permits, fees, and cost to build, I'm hearing quotes of now $350 to $400 a square foot. And again, not counting land costs. Does that sound about right to you?
That's a little steep. And I mean, it depends on what you're building. It's usually closer to 300, but it wasn't that long ago when you could still do something at, 200, 225. Probably about, I had a builder, I have a client who's a builder, and I think probably for a basic house, but subdivision style stucco, probably 7, 8 years ago, you'd be under 200.
Mm-hmm.
So it has gone up a lot. 350 to 400. I haven't checked the price on that would be, to me, be more of a custom builder, with some good upgrades and stuff. But, it's not shocking anymore. So, but I still think you could get, still 275, yeah, and then you got land costs and everything, plus, whether you've got to develop the lot, your utilities and everything, and, that's kinda what I do when I'm pricing a piece of land is I look at the residential comps in the area and say, "What's this thing gonna be worth when they're done?" Give or take, and then you can back down all the expenses to get there, and you'd be a lot of cases, you need that land for free to not be underwater, so it makes a lot more sense in a lot of cases to find something that's available in the Reading market and look for what you want, and maybe over time, you add some upgrades or tweaks to make it exactly what you want, but usually, you're gonna be money ahead by doing that and just not building, but I get it if you want something super custom. Or if you want something newer, right? If you're looking in like the Palisadro market where I live, I mean, to find something that you want that's not older and needs a lot of upgrades is a challenge. There's not a lot of new stuff out here and the prices are really high. So, but yeah, there's last quarter, it looks like we averaged right under 240 a foot overall for the market, $240 a square foot. So yeah, that can be tough when you're going to build at 300, 350. Um, some areas of the market, are more, high 270s in there and stuff. I mean, you have some stuff that gets over 3 if it's really been updated and it's all, to today's styles and stuff like that, but generally speaking, some of the averages in the higher end areas of Shasta County are right around that 280 mark a foot. So, yeah, it does make it tough to build.
Yeah. When it comes to, obviously this is about healthy and it's about wealthy, and we're going to talk about all that today. But let's talk about like building wealth through real estate as well. So I know it's obviously a lot of people out there, like they'll go one or they'll go the other. They'll either go stock market all the way or they'll go real estate all the way. I kind of find when I do my financial strategies and planning with people that it's nice to have a mixture of the two. But I'm specifically looking at right now, like most of the things don't seem to pencil as far as like buying a rental to rent it because of interest rates, because you have to have so much money down on a non-owner occupied. Where do you feel like this ADU stuff is starting to kick in? I haven't seen, I feel like ADUs, and for you guys don't know what that is, it's accessory dwelling unit. Basically, it's like a mother-in-law quarters, if that's what you used to call it. But like that's kind of approved and like ready to go in California. There was some laws passed that even if you're not in a subdivision that allows it, like you can really kind of get away with it with a section, I think call it like Section 9 or something. But like I still noticed that the costs that are so prohibitive to build a unit to get the rent out of it that you need to build it. Are you still seeing that as well, or has that kind of dwindled down a little? Has the cost? I feel like the cost of building an ADU is like really inefficient. Like it's like that's where you get up to $300 a square foot or more. Do you feel like that's the same way, or do you feel like there's still some value there, or are we heading the right direction?
Well, it's just back to what we were just talking about with the cost of building. So, with the accessory dwelling units, I mean, you can save some money over building a new home, right? Because you can come off of the existing utilities. If your septic's sized enough, you could utilize that from my understanding. You can tap into the current water supply, different things like that to save you money. Obviously, you already have the piece of land. The state's really pushing it hard, right? Because we are in such a deficit for housing and affordable housing. So they're trying to really push it. That's why the county and the city have free plans that are already approved. But at the end of the day, if you're still going to be, let's say you're at $250 a square foot, and typically from my knowledge, it's 1,200 square foot max, or 50% of your main residence, right? So how much rent are you going to get off that 1,200 square foot unit? And let's say you're at 250,000 to build that ADU. So, and that would then come down to location and whatnot. Obviously, if you're in a prime location where, like, again, not to bring up Palisadro again, but like finding a rental out here is near impossible, especially a small rental or something. But some of the hotter areas in Shasta County, so they go like hotcakes. They're a great thing to have investment wise, but again, it comes down to the numbers. What you put into it, what's the return and everything like that, right? So in some cases, you might not be that far off, again, buying an existing resale rental in
Mhm.
Shasta County, that's smaller square footage like that in a semi-decent location. You might not be too far off, plus you can go leverage a mortgage. There are some loan products now for ADUs, but it's still, I think overall, they're looking at loan to value ratio on your existing residence and everything like that. I don't know too much on the ADU specific loans that are coming available, but if you can go buy something existing, get an investment loan. And like you said, the hard part of getting in there is you typically need 25% down or more. The more you can put down on those, the better rate you're going to see. Your rate's typically about 1% higher than owner occupied. So yeah, it's a tougher market. I mean, the thing about real estate, you can put, I could bring you 100 grand and buy 100,000 in stocks and it'll go up. I can put 100 grand on a, $350,000 asset that's going to go up too. So you
Right.
can leverage the real estate to have a larger asset to reap the benefits of the appreciation on that asset in an appreciating market and use the total value of that asset and put down 20%, 25% or whatever, as opposed to, giving you X amount and that's 100% of what's going into the investment. But I think, like you say, play both of them.
No, I've been planning now for about 10 years, and I would tell you that like the people who seem to have the most solid plans seem to have both components. Obviously you can, have 22 rentals and you're going to be fine. You can also have, $1.7 million in your 401k and you're going to be fine. But I would say that even for the people who are kind of like, let's call people in their 40s and 50s who are getting close to retirement, having a rental, like maybe you could get into it and, that rent is going to consistently grow, right? The rent's going to, it's $1,000 this year, but it's $1,200 3 years from now, et cetera. So just keeping that in mind that your mortgage payment on that's going to be fixed, but your rent's going to go up. Now, hopefully your rents go up enough to cover, things like we talked about, like insurance, because insurance in California has, probably tripled in the last, 10 years. Hopefully it won't keep doing that. So you had mentioned, kind of got your stripes doing flips and stuff like that. I remember that Reading used to be a real big flip market too, and it doesn't seem like it's as much anymore. And you said you do a few. What's the flip market in Northern California like these days?
It's tough. Margins are really tough. I mean, it comes down to the same thing we just talked about with cost of building. In a lot of cases, it's always been cheaper per foot to build than it has been to remodel. So depending on how you're going about it, like when I was young, I would move into these things. I would just live there as I'd work on them every day and I was doing it all. Well, now I don't touch them anymore, and everybody and subs for everything. The margins are just tough. That's the biggest thing, finding them with the right margins, and you could spend forever, right? And that's a nice part about throwing money at your side of things over real estate is you just put the money in. Chris makes it go to work. You can put a lot of time, money, and effort into developing a real estate portfolio and hope that it really works out for you. But the flip thing is, it's not always what people think, right? The margins are very slim nowadays. I don't look for home runs because you can spend forever. Simpler ones, knowing your numbers, but finding things that pencil out is super tough.
Yeah.
I'm in
Yeah.
the industry. Obviously, I run into some of these things sometimes, but if you're out there competing with the amount of people and then you got people that are uneducated, they make the wrong moves. So they're blowing out pricing on them. They're probably getting hurt on them, but they're all missed opportunities for you if you're trying to do them, right and make everything work. So it's a tough deal. You can go after 10 flips and come up with zero. So
Yeah.
I don't invest a lot of time in it anymore because it is a real time suck. It can be, and I can focus in on my business and make 3 sales instead of focusing on one flip, and I'll be money ahead in time.
Right.
So you just
Right.
got to know what you're doing, be real cautious, know how to run the numbers, but it is slim pickings out there, I'll tell you. I mean, the market overall is slim, right? I mean, there's 675 homes for sale in all of Shasta County. Um, a lot of that is maybe not good inventory. Stuff's flying off the market if it's priced. If value and price are in alignment, it's gone like that in all price ranges. The
Mhm.
market is definitely, to me, feels like it's heating up in some aspects if you're priced right. And again, that's in all price ranges. We sold 4 over $1 million this month, and that's not normal in any market for Shasta County. So there's a lot of movement right now for the right stuff. There's still multiple offers, but In the flip market, if there's 10 buyers, 20 buyers for everything that's anywhere decent, the margins just get eaten up so fast. And then the cost of building and the cost of materials, it blows my mind. Just to give listeners an idea, I mean, a simple flip that I used to spend 40 grand on, I might be at 110.
Wow.
Repair cost and material costs. And I'm talking about a 20-year gap here, but that's how crazy it is. I mean, you can go into what's really maybe a heavy cosmetic fixer and you watch that budget fly up so fast. It's really
Right.
mind blowing nowadays.
Right. So, kind of going into real estate a little bit. So, how often do you work with a financial advisor when it comes to like real estate? Have you really ever kind of like worked with a financial advisor in those kind of situations where they were going to move that money to something that wasn't real estate, or is it mostly people go from real estate to real estate as far as investors go?
Well, it depends if you're trying to avoid taxes, right?
Right.
That's the
Absolutely.
tough part. There's not a lot of vehicles to be able to defer the taxes other than doing a 1031 exchange into your next investment. We were talking when I was in your office, some of the stuff I'm learning about the DSTs, right?
Good job. Yeah.
And things like that, which are very interesting vehicles. And you help clients with that stuff, right?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what Corey's referring to is, so when you do a 1031 exchange, you have to designate a property within 45 days. You have to buy that property within 90 days. Is that about right? 90 days? Or is it 180 to buy? But you have to
I
designate
think you have
almost
to
right away.
identify in 45, and I believe it's 90 or 180 days you got to
Yeah,
close.
but you have to get into a new place pretty quick. And so, like, especially if you're talking about rentals, you have to go from your rental to another rental, and like there's a very short amount of time. So, there's a thing called a DST or a Delaware Statutory Trust, and you can designate that as one of your properties in that 45 days. And so that way it's like a backup, right? So if you can't find another property, you don't get stuck with all the capital gains and the repayments. You can move it you can stay in the Delaware Statutory Trust, or you can move it into what's called an UPREIT. And an UPREIT is basically a real estate investment trust that's specifically designed so that you can move your equity into this real estate trust, investment trust, and then that trust is filled with all sorts of rental properties, but probably on a larger scale. So like big apartment buildings with 120 units, or maybe a commercial building that houses all the Walgreens, things like that. That's the kind of real estate that you get into then. And then you can start getting dividends and benefits off of those trusts the same way you would as rental income. But the difference is that you don't have to pay those capital gains. We had talked about it like the example is if you had someone who had 22 units, but they get to like 60, 65 years old and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. Like, to get out of those units, you have to like sell them. And if you sell them, then you're going to get absolutely killed with capital gains and depreciation recapture, et cetera. If you try to sell more than 2 units in a year, man, you're going to have a ton of money going out. And so a lot of
Mhm.
people, they get stuck. And so what they do is they just stay in them. And even though they don't want to run them, they just stay in them, and they still fix the toilets and they still repair the roofs and they do all those kinds of things, hoping that what will save them is that they'll die and that their kids will inherit, their beneficiaries will inherit this real estate, and then they can sell it with no capital gains because of the new stepped up basis. So if you're like I said, my people that I work with in that situation are typically in their late 50s, early 60s. They're winding down their careers. They've gathered a bunch of real estate and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just go be somewhere on a beach and I don't want to mess with this. So that's where the DST comes into, which I found kind of fascinating. And again, from our conversation, reaffirmed that it's not really a known fact. It's not really something people do. So I would just tell you right now, if there's one quick thing you can take from this thing, if you're going to sell a rental unit and you don't want to get the capital gains back or the recapture on the depreciation, designate in the 1031 exchange a DST. And then that will give you like a fail safe. So if you don't find another property, then you can move it into this DST and not have to deal with that. So, but yeah,
You can
I was just
identify.
talking. What's that? Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say you can identify multiple properties, 3, right? And make
Correct.
one of those the DST. Yeah, a lot of people just don't know about it. And I think a lot more investors sitting on assets would be if they really knew about this. Because I think in a lot of cases, not dealing with the roofs, the toilets, and everything else, they'll find that these DSTs can bring them actually a bigger return with no management. and then they defer all the taxes. So how do you help people get into those?
So, like I said, the first thing you got to do is designate the DST as the holder. It's basically a placeholder, and so the Delaware Statutory Trust holds the equity, that you received, and the basis and all the things that go with it that you would normally roll into another unit. You're rolling into like a placeholder, and then once you're in the placeholder, you can leave it there. You're not going to get anything out of it, but or you can move it from the DST into a specific. So everybody's heard of a REIT, a real estate investment trust. These are called UPREITs, and I forget exactly what the UP stands for, but it's like universal property or something. I don't remember the exact wording on it, but then they can move into one of those, and then one of those will, basically now you're invested in tons of real estate. You're a partner in this group, and the dividends are basically the rents, and you're going to make money on it. And like you said, you don't have to fix a toilet. You don't have to manage it in any way, shape, or form. And the numbers are pretty close to what people get if they truly look at the cost of owning real estate as an investor. And so again, I think investing in real estate is a phenomenal way to gain wealth. I think it's a phenomenal way to grow your wealth, especially again, like we live in California, you have really good appreciation. But with that being said, I think it's really important people need to know that there is a true exit strategy from it that most people don't know exists. And that is a DST with an UPREIT.
The hardest thing I find is getting them to understand it or being willing to understand because
Yeah.
it's kind of foreign.
Yeah.
Newer as they change the qualifying assets and stuff with the 1031. But I'll talk to, an older gentleman or whatever, and, he wants out. He wants out. He's been dealing with rentals for 30 years and he wants out. And then you're giving him away, but he doesn't want to deal with pay the taxes.
Mhm.
And you tell them this, and it's just so foreign, they don't really even wanna deal with it.
Right.
So I'm trying to figure out how to figure
Right.
it out.
It's, like you've got all these people on Instagram and Facebook talking about things all the time. This is something you do not hear about. I find that most people on Instagram and Facebook that are like influencers in real estate are never telling people to get out of real estate. They're always telling them to get more of it. And so I think I think it's just a hole in the market right now you're not seeing, but, hopefully shows like this can get people, they can call their advisor and be like, hey, can I do this? So, and again, as an advisor, it's great because, you're going to help them, stay away from all the capital gains and taxes, and you're going to, have more assets under management. So it's a great tool. Now, I will tell you that not every advisor has any idea about this. This is actually pretty advanced stuff. So make sure, don't just be like, hey, do you know if they don't know what a DST is, then just don't even pursue the conversation, because that's kind of like a telltale sign that they know what they're doing or they have no idea what they're doing. So that's a little pro tip there. So let's talk about a little bit about your health, right? Like, so you're a busy guy, you're managing a team, you're doing your own sales and stuff like that. But I do know that you spend a significant amount of your time with like working out and things like that. Tell us a little bit about like how that came about. In other words, like, was there a time in your life where you're like, hey, I can't do this anymore, I got to get better at this? Or has it always been that way for you? Or has it always been, hey, I need to like take care of this side?
No, no, no. I don't think I walked in a gym from the day I got done with college football to probably 2000. I don't know, somewhere around 2015. I mean, maybe I walked in a few times, but and I've always been overweight. And right now I'm stronger than I've ever been. I get to the gym every day, 6 a.m. Got fortunately semi have a trainer that the owner of the gym and the main trainer has been my workout partner for like, I don't know, probably getting close to 5 years now. Yeah, I mean, actually in COVID is when we switched over. So it's super important, keeping my mind right. And I'm not in perfect health. You look at me, you might wonder if I do work out every day, but
You can see it in the
I'm
traps. You
losing
can see it right
I'm
here.
losing weight right now. I'm staying engaged in the meals. My energy level's picking up. And it's just so critical for the body. I actually have an autoimmune disease, so rheumatoid arthritis. And most people, that stops them in their tracks. I can tell you, I can go into the gym in pain every day and I walk out feeling 10 times better. So for me, I've got to do it and I enjoy it. A lot of people are like, I'm working out at home or I'm doing it by myself or they're locked in. Don't get me wrong. I get after my workouts, but I also call it my social hour,
Hmm.
which can annoy some people, but I'm an outgoing guy and I like, I know everybody in the gym that's working out around me. So I have fun with it. But you got to get in there. I used to do it late afternoon, but I'm super focused on work now, so I get in early in the morning. Usually there about 5:45 by then, and I'm usually there 5:45 to 7:05 or somewhere in there, and then I get home and just get ready quick, and I'm in the office by about 8:10 every day. So, it's just so critical for your mindset, the way you feel, the way you look, everything. I've got big goals this year to shave off some more weight, another 15 pounds. It seems like a big goal, but I actually wanna be the same weight I was in when I was playing college ball. So, but it's
Yeah.
so
Where'd you play
critical for
college
the
ball at, by the
mindset and
way?
everything. I just played Chase Junior College, so nothing big. So
What's the JC in Santa Cruz? What's that? Is that Cabrillo?
Cabrillo.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
That's great.
Yep. Yeah, I had an opportunity to move on, but I was playing D-line in college and snapping, but I only had one opportunity, potential opportunity at Oregon State to long snap, and I'm just not into college. I love learning. I learn every day. But when you tell me what classes to do and what I'm going to learn for the day, I'm just
Mhm.
not into it. And so I chose to not move on because I am actually not that big of a guy. And the smallest long snapper at the time was 6'4", I think, 275. And I'm 5'11", 225 at the time. And I
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm about done being forced to go to after practice study hall and go to class every day and all this stuff. So I wanted to get in and just I'm an entrepreneur and get after sales and construction and stuff. So anyhow, yeah, it's not a big deal that I even played. It's just I want to get back down to that weight for some reason. It's
Mhm.
stuck in my head. So but yeah, every day gotta work out. I'm trying to do more, move more, sit too much in the dang office. That can offset your gym time, but I'm super disciplined on the food and everything and nutrition, not so much on the weekends, but I like to have fun too, but I'm getting more and more disciplined, just feeling out how I feel every day and my mindset and every energy levels. I mean, once you get over 40, it starts to, you got to stay on top of it. You
Yeah.
just, whether it's brain fog or the way you feel or motivation, it all ties into that gym time. I certainly need to do more cardio, but I do love my gym time and got to do it every day.
I've done so much research in this genre, and I've interviewed a bunch of great people. I've got another interview coming up with a guy who is like, I mean, he's like 60, and he just looks like a Ken doll. I mean, just looks amazing. So I'm looking forward to talking to him. The one thing that I'm adding in for 2026 is I am scheduling time for a walk, and that time is exactly after I eat. So the one thing that I've done out of all the research, and I don't have one on today, but I wear a glucose monitor, continuous glucose monitor. I call it my snitch. So that way, if I decide I want to eat something that's not so good for me, like it'll snitch on me by showing my blood sugar go up. Well, blood sugar goes up, your insulin goes up. Well, one of the things that I've noticed through all this trial and error and kind of seeing things like how my body reacts to certain things, because everybody's different, right? One of the things that I'm doing this that I've absolutely positively seen the results is once you eat, just going for a 10-minute walk, not like a race walk or anything like that, just a decently paced walk. I mean, you could still talk to your friends if you're walking with them. There's no, at the end of it, just getting out that walk, that will lower your blood sugar spike by like, I think the number is like 60%. I've seen it go down that much. I mean, you can already tell because like, if it's down, you know what you have to kind of know what it would be otherwise. But I would say at least 40 to 60% reduction. If you were to sell a pill that would do that, the pharmaceutical companies would charge you $1,200 a month for it, guaranteed. Like if you could just eat and then take a little shot and that would knock you down like 60%, they would 100% make $1,200 a month on that. So I would say anybody listening, if you're fighting against so here's what I say is so if you can get your blood sugars down, right, after you eat, then that also lowers your insulin down, which also lowers your insulin resistance, which also makes you more insulin sensitive, which also makes it so that your body doesn't carry as much weight. So it's all kind of like this whole cascade of events that happens from just a 10-minute walk. So I would definitely recommend to you and anybody listening, schedule your day so that when you eat, you walk. And if you could just do that one thing for 2026, I think that you'll see 15 pounds come off pretty easy just by doing that. Again, not a doctor, just do a lot of research. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. I am a financial advisor, but I'm not necessarily the person listening's financial advisor. So I just have to do all my disclaimers. Kind of going back to, real estate. It's a grind. You know what I mean? It's a lot 24/7. You're out and about when people are, you're out and about when people are, wanting to see things, right? So it's like, the showings are at 6 o'clock on the evening, or they're like 10 o'clock on a Saturday, because that's when people aren't working. How do you prioritize the health part of it? How do you make sure that you go to the gym every day?
Well, I mean, doing it in the morning, I mean, I made it probably, gosh, time flies. It's probably been about 7 years. It's been a non-negotiable with the gym time. Obviously, I battle the food thing like anything, always got the one battle, but I just made it a priority. And then this year, I mean, there's really no reason you can't get it out in the morning. So now that it's scheduled in the morning, still used to rarely miss it, but now that I'm focused going so hard on business right now and getting back after sales instead of just managing a big team, just getting out there with the customers and people myself, I had to switch to the mornings. So it was just always a non-negotiable, but I mean, it's always an excuse, right? You can always book everything in your life around your priorities. You just can, even in real estate. I mean, I've never missed one of my kids' games, never missed their whatever it was, a school, Christmas choir or whatever, I don't know. I just never miss any of those. So if you master time blocking and you just actually set the appointments in your calendar, and health being one of those, there's just there's no reason you can't do it. So it's really just an excuse. Yes, real estate has some crazy hours. People want to, have to build business when people are at work, and then when they're off work, that's when they're going to want to be out in the field. I mean, for me, fortunately, I have a great team, staff and a few agents that can assist me. So I make sure I have a life, and we always can maintain customer care. But yeah, I mean, it's just all time blocking. It's whether you want to or not, right? You're either going to prioritize it and you're going to put in your schedule. And that's for anything. I think most people really are challenged with time blocking and time management and staying efficient and staying on target. And I'm not perfect. I mean, I've been doing this, now 20 years, and I'm probably just getting better than I've ever been. But it's because I want to, get after it so bad. Yeah. You either want it, you don't. If you want it bad enough, then you're gonna prioritize the time and put it in your schedule, and you just don't have to miss ever.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to do for the new season of the Healthy Wealth Experience was I like to ask my guests the final question, which is, how do you define wealth?
It's a good question. It's definitely, for me, overall, spiritual, family, sure, financial, health, right? Having all those things in alignment. It's very challenging, right? To pull them all together. I feel like I'm always missing in one sector if I'm focused on the other. But for me, yeah, it's really, being well balanced and succeeding in all of those aspects of life. It's not just money. It's not just your investment account. It's, if you could have whatever it is, 10 million in the bank, and all those other sectors of life could be massive chaos and failures. So for me, it's pulling it all together at every level: family, marriage, health, financial, and then, personal, you know, enjoying life, having your things you actually enjoy in there too. I mean, those are all things you got to balance and figure out how to get in that weekly calendar. And as you know, time starts moving fast. Seems like just mind blowing every week. I'm like, oh, it's Friday again. Seems like a couple hours ago it was last Friday. But trying to pull all those things together and doing it well is true wealth to me,
Yeah.
if
I
that
love
makes
that. It's a great
sense.
definition. It's a great definition. I feel like mine's extremely similar to that, and I feel like, one of the things that's nice about visiting the idea of what wealth is that it gives you a time to reflect and be grateful for how much you have accomplished in that arena. And I think that sometimes when we hear about wealth, especially on the internet, it's going to be right. And I think that, you get to a certain age and you realize that, like, it's not about the money. And that's why some people, like, are multimillionaires and they're just absolutely, they take their own lives, or they're just depressed all the time, and they're just like, or they do hard drugs or stuff like that. It's because they they never got a good definition of what wealth is. And so when they achieved financial success, they thought they'd get there and they didn't. So no, I really like that. That's good. I really like that. So before we go, is there anything else you want to talk about?
No, just thanks for having me on here. Really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
My phone number is 530-215-4132, or go to CoryMeyer.com and get a hold of us through there.
So thank you so much for joining me, Cory. I really appreciate you. Thank you to all the listeners who listen to this. We are doing so well right now. The last time I checked, we were at about 700,000 views across all platforms over the last 60 days. It seems to be growing every month. We seem to be getting more steam, getting more followers. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe. Please make comments. Whatever you do to subscribe and comment and things like that, share it with your friends. That actually helps the algorithms recognize that this is high quality content that other people might want to hear, and they'll show it more, and then we'll grow and grow and grow. So if you're listening to this right now and you enjoyed it, please hit a subscribe button or leave a comment. Leave a comment about like what we talked about today, or some questions you might have for me or Cory, and I'll follow up with Cory for you. Or you can get a hold of him on his website and ask him questions there. So either way, once again, thank you all for being here. And here's to a wonderful 2026 for everybody. Thank you, Cory. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having me.